Welcome to Movie Recap, a channel dedicated to those addicted to movies. Our focus is to showcase the best recap of your favorite flick. Sit back, grab your popcorn and get ready to be amazed by Memories of Murder. Two straightforward investigators named Park and Cho were tasked with looking into two murders in a province in South Korea in 1986. However, after the murderer repeats the same pattern of multiple killings, the police come to the conclusion that they are tracking the nation's first known serial killer. In this true crime thriller, Park and Joe try to piece together the facts and solve the case using just their most basic abilities and instruments. Spoilers ahead. The film is set in October 1986 in the South Korean province of Hwaseong, where a woman has been discovered dead next to a field. The locals alert the police right away, and head investigator Park Do-man shows up on the scene. He searches a sewer and discovers the victim's decaying body. It is evident that she had unfair treatment before to her murder. Do-man examines the area, then heads back to the police to begin questioning the numerous criminal suspects. He uses a typewriter, so the process is somewhat laborious. Do-man snaps photos of each suspect, which are then organized in a book by female investigator Kwon Kyo-kei. He looks them in the eyes, thinking he can tell who done it by looking them in the eye. They find out at that very moment that another woman has been killed nearby. When Do-man arrives at the scene, he discovers a footprint and believes it to be a clue. Regretfully, a tractor passes over the footprint and obliterates it before he gets a closer look. Consequently, Do-man finds himself back at the station with no proof gathered. After a few months, it seems as though the case has been abandoned. However, Do-man finds out one day from his girlfriend that Beck, a disabled boy with mental scars, had been following the second victim prior to her passing. When he eventually discovers a clue, he takes Beck to the station right away so he may question him. Then Do-man and one of his colleagues give him a severe beating. The unfortunate guy only confesses that he was stalking her when they try to squeeze a confession out of him. A man is observed approaching a woman on a silent road in the following scene. She doesn't answer when he attempts to ask for directions to a certain location. This is a result of the recent murder cases, which have made everyone in the town afraid. Despite her best efforts, the woman falls into a heap while trying to flee. At that moment, Do-man appears and leaps on the man, thinking he is going after the girl. He finds out later that the man is Seoul-based detective Seo Tae-yoon, who has offered to help with the investigation. Do-man visits the crime scene with Beck's shoes, leaves a footprint, and snaps a photo as they are on their way to the station. After that, he returns to the station and makes an effort to force Beck to confess. But this time, he displays the images of the phony shoe prints. Even so, Beck continues to deny any connection to the crime. The investigators, fed up, drag Beck out into a field and make threats to bury him alive. Thus, the latter begins reluctantly to describe what transpired that day. He discloses that the victim was first strangled using her bra, and then her stockings were tied. When the investigators learn this, they are taken aback because crimes like murder and violent assault were less common in Korea at the time. When Beck responds, "I don't know," they start beating the living daylights out of him. They want to know more. Beck is taken for a spot check in front of the reporters after being identified as the murderer the following day. Luckily, Tae-yoon arrives right on schedule and cuts them off. He examines Beck's heavily scarred hands and declares that there is no way he could have tied the knots around his victims. After realizing that Beck is being set up, the villagers fight the officers after learning this. They will do everything it takes to stand by their neighborhood friend. We meet Shin Dong-chul, Tae-yoon's new teammate who has been moved to lead them, in the scenario that follows. Dong-chul starts to work right away and inquires of the other cops as to whether the killings were comparable in any way. All of this has left them stunned, though, because they could have pursued the genuine murderer instead of wasting their time accusing an innocent man. Luckily, Tae-yoon, the astute man, informs them that the victims wore red clothing and that all of the murders occurred on rainy days. Dong-chul then inquires as to whether the deaths of the two victims were also identical, but Tae-yoon surprises them all with her response. He discloses that there were 3 victims, one of whom has not yet been located. It turns out that on a rainy day last week, a third girl, who was dressed in red, went missing. Tae-yoon is confirmed to be correct and the third body is discovered quickly. Upon verifying the pattern of murders, the police consider the case to be one of serial killings. Dong-chul advises them to get ready for the next time it rains, since that is when the killer is most likely to strike because there are too many similarities between the instances. One day, it starts to rain while the detectives are assisting in quelling a student uprising. They all prepare to carry out the plan. In an attempt to attract the murderer, Hwaseong, the female detective, wanders the vicinity where the killings had occurred while wearing a red outfit. Sadly, no one shows up, not even after hours of waiting. In light of this, the investigators go to a checkpoint and encounter two schoolgirls there. One of them relates a tale of an alleged murderer who, it seems, spends the day hiding in the restroom and emerges only at night. The investigators laugh it off, as they should since they find the story humorous. A woman is shown at home in the meantime, listening to the radio when she receives a call. The person on the other end requests that she come see him right now. The woman, donning a red jacket, chooses to exchange it in the hopes of avoiding an attack. She begins humming a song as soon as she leaves her house in an attempt to divert her attention. She stops dead in her tracks, though, as she hears someone whistling as she approaches the fields. The woman tries to flee because she is aware of what might be hiding in the shadows. Unfortunately, a man unexpectedly jumps on her before she can get assistance. The cops discover her lifeless body the following day. She has been killed by strangulation with her own underwear, just like the others. Hwaseong implies later that she has something significant to exhibit at the police station. She shows him what appears to be a list of songs that have been aired on the radio and discloses that the same song has been played each time there has been a murder. Hwaseong goes on to say that someone asked for the music to be played on rainy days, which just so happened to be the same days as the murders. Do-man just laughs it off, but Tae-yoon and Dong-chul research the matter. Tae-yoon visits the radio station in the hopes of finding the postcard with the song request, only to be saddened to see that they have already thrown it away. Conversely, Do-man visits the crime scene with Yoon-ho, one of his co-workers, and spreads a talisman around, hoping that the victim's face will show on it as it dries. They quickly hid in the bushes when they heard footsteps approaching. To their horror, Tae-yoon has shown up to examine the scene even though the two still think he is the murderer. However, Tae-yoon also hides on the other side as they hear someone else arriving abruptly. After some time, a male shows up and begins indulging in a woman's intimate apparel. When the investigators see this, they get disgusted. Yoon-ho inadvertently produces a sound that alerts the man, causing him to flee just as he is about to move. He is pursued by the investigators as well, and they finally find him close to a building site. They brutally interrogate the pervert after putting him in detention. The individual insists that he was merely enacting a twisted fantasy and that he did not murder anyone. The detectives discover that the pervert is, in fact, a highly hard-working individual who provides for his family as the investigation progresses. When the townspeople outside learn about it, they begin to demonstrate in favor of the man's release. They have had enough of discrimination and police brutality. Tae-yoon visits the females who informed him about the suspected murderer hiding in public restrooms, frustrated that the investigation is not progressing. He finds a woman in the aforementioned restroom after speaking with them. She initially declines to answer the door, but she eventually agrees to assist Tae-yoon after learning that he works as a detective. He is then shown to the home where the rumors first surfaced by the woman. It belongs to a really scared woman who survived something similar. As Tae-yoon hears her account, he understands that the woman was also attacked by the serial killer they are hunting for. But the only thing he finds out that's helpful is that the guy who did this had really gentle hands. He quickly returns to the station and examines the pervert's hands as a result. He lets the innocent man go after confirming that they are not soft, much to Do-man's chagrin. Hwaseong switches on the radio at that same moment, playing the murderer's song. It's also started to rain, coincidentally. Hwaseong dashes to the radio station to grab the postcard, sensing that a murder is about to occur. Sadly, they discover another dead body shortly after an hour has passed. Something is lodged in her private area. It's a tiny bit of peach. However, Hwaseong discovers that the postcard actually belonged to Hwaseong, a factory worker, when he eventually locates it at the radio station. When they take him into custody right away, Tae-yoon checks his hand first. It is quite soft, thus it does suit the description. When they question him later, they bring up the fact that the killings began after he came there. While admitting to mailing the postcards, Hwaseong insists that no one was killed. He assures them that he would not make the mistake of admitting to something he did not do. The detectives are incensed by this, but they are unable to discipline him because of their already poor public image. Hwaseong becomes agitated and snaps at them when they confront him about the peaches. Yoon-ho becomes enraged and beats him to a pulp, believing he is the murderer. This leads to his own dismissal from the case. The crew decides to investigate every clue they have previously found again, now that they are starting over from scratch. They eventually come to understand that Beck described the incident as a bystander when they play his confession. The investigators then head over to Beck's family eatery. When they arrive, they discover an inebriated Yoonho fighting with unidentified individuals. Beck shows up out of nowhere, slamming Yoonho with a wooden board that pierces his leg through a rusty nail. When Beck realizes what he has done, he runs away and accidentally ends himself to the location of the first murder. Do-man and Tae-yoon follow shortly after. They start pressuring him for further details once more. At last, Beck caves in and admits to having seen the murderer's face 3 times. They show him a picture of Hyeongyu, thinking they are getting near to solving the case, but Beck instead begins talking incoherently about a home fire. The investigators are abruptly confronted by an enraged throng of locals who want to discipline them. Poor Beck is terrified by this and begins wildly running around. He unfortunately fails to see the incoming train and is instantly killed when struck. The police station gets a lot of calls the next day because the news is all over the place. A semen sample was discovered, according to one of them, who works in the forensics lab. The inability to inspect it due to outdated technology in Korea is the sole issue. In order to receive the results, they must ship the semen sample to the United States. In the meantime, the hospital informs Do-man of some heartbreaking news. Yoonho's leg turns out to need to be amputated since the rusty nail caused tetanus to spread. A woman is en route to her workplace somewhere. Because of the news she has been hearing lately, she is moving very cautiously. Not long after, she is passed by a schoolgirl. Even in this frightening scenario, there is no interaction between the two. Abruptly, a man comes up behind the schoolgirl and drags her away. After that, he binds her up, treats her cruelly, and ends her life violently. When the reporters arrive the following day, Tae-yoon is the first to arrive at the scene. Once again, the serial killer appears to be the perpetrator behind the discovery of the schoolgirl's body. That same girl who led him to the restroom lady turns out to be the victim, as Tae-yoon discovers. Hurrying over to beat up Hyeongyu, devastated that he was unable to assist her, he attacks. At that moment, Do-man shows up holding the semen's DNA results, just as Tae-yoon is about to kill him with his gun. Hyeongyu's true innocence is revealed by it. The investigators are left in the dark about the identity of the murderer and are back at square one. Thus the case is finally closed after a few days. Then, the film cuts to Do-man having breakfast with his family in 2003. He is now a prosperous businessman and has retired from the police department. He visits the same crime scene one day, which used to be full of women's corpses. Do-man is staring at the sewer where the first body was discovered when a little girl approaches him out of nowhere. She reveals that he was not the only individual who had been monitoring the drain at some point. When the film comes to a close, Do-man is startled to see that the murderer might still be alive and turns to face the camera. We really hope you enjoyed today's recap of Memories of Murder. Please leave a comment below of what you loved about the movie and why. Be sure to like the video and please don't forget to support our channel by subscribing so you don't miss any amazing content. Until next time, lights, camera, action. We look forward to seeing you in our next video.